The glittering landscape of modern celebrity culture often appears to be an impenetrable fortress of carefully constructed illusions, where every public appearance, every high-profile accolade, and every seemingly spontaneous digital update is calculated with absolute precision. Within this high-stakes arena of global visibility, few figures have captivated and polarized the public imagination quite like the modern residents of Montecito. The world watches their every movement with a mixture of intense fascination and deeply rooted skepticism, analyzing the thin line between genuine global influence and the relentless machinery of contemporary public relations. It is a world where honors are bestowed not always for tangible triumphs on the field of human endeavor, but often for the sheer weight of a name and the media storms that follow it. In this atmosphere of perpetual scrutiny, a single announcement can trigger a cascading sequence of events that exposes the internal dynamics of fame, rivalry, and the unending quest for relevance. As we delve into this fascinating examination of status and perception, we invite you to become a permanent part of our community by subscribing to the channel, ensuring you never miss an episode of our deep dives into the cultural phenomena that shape our world. The recent inclusion of high-profile figures in major international rankings has once again ignited a fierce debate about the true nature of modern prestige, and whether the institutions that distribute these honors are maintaining their historic integrity or simply chasing the viral engagement that comes with controversial star power. To understand the current ripples echoing through the international media landscape, one must look closely at the mechanisms of high-profile listmakers and the growing skepticism surrounding their selections. When an international publication of historic standing decides to elevate an individual to a definitive list of global influencers, the public traditionally expects a record of undeniable achievement or a transformative contribution to a specific field. However, when the accolade touches upon the fiercely competitive and merit-based world of international sport, the criteria for inclusion become even more intensely debated by commentators and audiences alike. The sporting world is inherently defined by measurable victories, historic sacrifices, and undeniable physical prowess displayed on the global stage. When an individual whose connection to this world is primarily administrative or ceremonial is suddenly elevated alongside legendary athletes and global sporting icons, it inevitably raises fundamental questions about the motives of the selectors. Critics argue that such choices represent a shift away from honoring authentic excellence toward a system that rewards the ability to command headlines and generate digital traffic for struggling print media entities. This dynamic becomes particularly evident when observing the reaction to recent honors bestowed upon the younger son of the British monarch, whose public role has evolved from a dedicated military veteran into a highly scrutinized figure on the global charity circuit. While his establishment of a prominent international athletic event for wounded, injured, and sick servicemen and women has received widespread and justified praise for its positive social impact, the decision to categorize him as one of the most influential figures in the entire sporting world has struck many veteran commentators as an extraordinary exaggeration. The event in question, while deeply laudable and emotionally resonant, does not operate on the same commercial or cultural scale as global phenomena like the Football World Cup or the pinnacle of motorsport racing. Therefore, the decision to award such a towering accolade is viewed by many as a calculated public relations maneuver rather than an objective assessment of sporting influence, reminding observers of past instances where Hollywood organizations or sports networks have granted highly controversial trophies to the same individual, despite intense public pushback from the families of true heroes. The pattern of acquiring these prestigious titles and trophies has become a central pillar of what many PR analysts describe as a strategic playbook designed to garner positive headlines and manufacture an aura of unassailable global significance. This reliance on institutional validation is not a new development, but rather a continuation of a long-standing relationship between the couple and prominent American media institutions that dates back to their initial departure from the traditional framework of the British royal family. The public memory easily recalls the striking and somewhat surreal magazine covers that marked their early days of independence, images that became the subject of widespread cultural parody due to their highly staged and unusual compositions. These visual presentations, where one partner often seemed to dominate the frame while the other appeared almost auxiliary, set a precedent for a style of public relations that prioritizes carefully curated imagery over substantive, universally recognized achievements. As the discourse surrounding these honors intensifies, it draws attention not only to the recipients, but to the declining institutional credibility of the publications that grant them. When legacy media brands repeatedly engage with figures who are perceived by a large segment of the public as having contributed little of tangible or lasting philanthropic value, they risk jeopardizing their own standing as objective arbiters of global influence. The spectacle of individuals happily and uncritically accepting accolades that the public feels they have not genuinely earned creates a distinct sense of unease, highlighting a growing disconnect between elite media circles and the ground reality of public perception. This disconnect becomes even more fascinating when observed through the lens of internal family dynamics, where the pursuit of the spotlight appears to be a constant, highly competitive endeavor. The moment one individual manages to bask in the warm glow of rare, positive publicity, it often triggers an immediate and powerful counter-response from within their own sphere, as if the spotlight is a finite resource that must be reclaimed at all costs, leading to sudden, unexpected shifts in the media narrative that keep the global audience perpetually engaged. The sudden and dramatic shift in the media landscape that followed this latest sporting accolade provides a textbook example of the intense internal competition for public attention that defines the daily reality of the Montecito household. No sooner had the ink dried on the praise surrounding the prestigious sports listing than a massive, unexpected collection of personal photographs was abruptly released to the public via social media, effectively hijacking the global news cycle. This tactical maneuver, executed within an incredibly short window of time, seemed explicitly designed to divert the spotlight away from the husband's individual moment of recognition and pull it squarely back toward the wife's personal brand. To veteran media observers, the timing of this digital photo dump was far from accidental, representing instead a calculated intervention to ensure that the narrative remained centered on her terms, completely eclipsing the rare positive publicity that had been independently generated by her partner. The content of this extensive visual presentation immediately sparked intense debate and widespread criticism across international entertainment channels due to its remarkably informal and, some would argue, highly undignified nature. For an individual who consistently and fiercely insists on retaining her formal royal title of Duchess, the imagery presented to the public appeared profoundly at odds with the traditional expectations of dignity, decorum, and grace associated with such an elevated station. The collection included highly unconventional and fragmented self-portraits, such as close-up angles focusing strictly on her chest and torso, while wearing what commentators quickly dubbed a Canadian tuxedo, an all-denim ensemble that felt jarringly casual for a global public figure. This deliberate showcase of casual attire and intimate physical framing was viewed by many as a stark departure from the polished classic standards maintained by other prominent members of the British royal family. raising serious questions about the strategic direction of her public image. Furthermore, the photographic collection offered a highly controlled and frustratingly elusive glimpse into the lives of the couple's young children, continuing a long-standing pattern that has both intrigued and irritated the public for years. Rather than presenting clear, straightforward portraits that celebrate family life, the images featured the children in bizarrely obscured or heavily edited compositions, where they appeared either photographically cut off at the head or turned entirely away from the lens to show only the backs of their heads. One particular image that drew significant attention and widespread mockery featured their young daughter wearing a visibly stained and unwashed t-shirt, adorned with a slogan referencing a prominent pop music icon. Another photograph captured their young son engaging in an outdoor activity with his father on the expansive grounds of their California estate, using a large sports ball in an apparent attempt to project an image of wholesome domestic bliss that felt completely manufactured to fit a specific public relations narrative. The most perplexing and scrutinized element of this entire digital release, however, was a moody, black and white, highly artistic photograph depicting the couple from behind, standing with their arms wrapped around each other in an intense display of romantic solidarity. While clearly intended to broadcast an unshakable bond and convince the world of their enduring love story, closer inspection by eagle-eyed internet sleuths revealed a glaring and embarrassing oversight that completely undermined the authenticity of the post. The creator of the image had neglected to crop out the original digital timestamp, which conclusively proved that the photograph had been taken in 2017, nearly a decade prior to its current publication. This revelation immediately prompted a wave of skepticism and public ridicule, leaving audiences to wonder why the couple felt compelled to reach deep into their archival vault for a 10-year-old image to demonstrate their current marital harmony, rather than simply taking a fresh, genuine photograph together in the present day. This reliance on outdated material strongly supports the theory that the entire visual campaign was an act of absolute desperation, driven by an urgent need to counter the long-standing criticisms of artificiality and hyper-perfectionism that have plagued her brand since its inception. Throughout her public life, she has been frequently mocked for projecting an entirely unrealistic and overly curated lifestyle, where she would famously pose in pristine white garments while engaging in messy household tasks. In a transparent effort to dismantle this negative perception, she attempted to adopt a raw, unpolished, and supposedly authentic aesthetic reminiscent of the casual social media habits favored by teenage pop sensations and younger, highly relevant Hollywood stars. By showcasing messy shirts, fragmented body angles, and unedited family moments, she desperately sought to communicate to a younger demographic that she is down to earth, relatable, and authentic, completely ignoring the fact that coming from her, such a highly orchestrated display achieves the exact opposite effect. The fundamental flaw in this public relations strategy is that the global audience has become entirely wise to the machinery behind these supposedly spontaneous digital updates. Rather than perceiving the photo dump as a genuine, sincere window into her private life, critics and supporters alike recognized it as a highly curated carousel designed to manipulate public perception and paint a very specific, self-serving picture. Every single image within the collection was engineered to address a specific vulnerability or criticism currently circulating in the media. The romantic embrace was intended to silence rumors of marital strife. The casual attire was meant to project humility, and the sudden inclusion of the son was a direct response to accusations that she disproportionately highlights her daughter in public statements. This systematic approach to social media proves that nothing she does is truly authentic or spontaneous, but is instead the result of intense deliberation and strategic planning aimed at maintaining a vice grip on the global media narrative, regardless of the cost to her personal credibility or the dignity of her family. This relentless compulsion to control the narrative and dominate the global media landscape reveals a deeper, more fundamental aspect of her public persona, which is an apparent inability to tolerate anyone else occupying the center of attention, even if that individual happens to be her own husband. For years, close observers of the couple have pointed out a recurring pattern where the prince's independent achievements and charitable endeavors are systematically overshadowed by sudden, high-profile interventions from his partner. This dynamic has been particularly visible during consecutive iterations of his signature international sports tournament for wounded veterans, where her presence has consistently transformed a noble, military-focused event into a highly publicized showcase for her personal wardrobe and celebrity status. Media analysts have noted that whenever the spotlight threatens to shift away from her, or when her role is not positioned as the absolute focal point of the proceedings, the enthusiasm vanishes, occasionally leading to premature departures that leave her partner to carry out his duties entirely alone. This behavior highlights a profound sense of resentment not just toward the natural focus given to her husband's projects, but also toward the wider institution of the British royal family, from which they separated with immense public friction. The strategy of using calculated digital updates to distract from major royal events or to counter positive coverage of senior royals in London has become a predictable feature of international entertainment reporting. By dropping highly provocative, confusing, or artificially engineered photo collections at critical moments, she attempts to ensure that British and international media outlets are forced to dedicate precious column inches and broadcast time to her activities, thereby diluting the public impact of her overseas relatives. It is a game of media chess played with a high degree of cynicism, where the ultimate objective is to remain permanently relevant, even if the methods employed are increasingly viewed by the public as transparent, desperate, and deeply unedifying. To fully understand why these actions matter on a broader cultural level, one must examine the personal histories and backgrounds of the individuals involved, particularly the transition from a structured career in television to the complex arena of international royalty and global philanthropy. Before her marriage into one of the world's oldest dynasties, her professional identity was firmly rooted in the competitive world of American cable television and the burgeoning industry of lifestyle blogging. This background provided her with a highly specific understanding of self-promotion, brand building, and media manipulation, skills that are highly effective in the world of commercial entertainment, but often clash violently with the traditional, service-oriented expectations of public royalty. Her early ventures into corporate partnerships and lifestyle curation were defined by a polished, hyper-perfectionist aesthetic that sought to sell an idealized version of modern womanhood, a formula that she has repeatedly tried to apply to her subsequent philanthropic work, with increasingly polarizing results. When this commercial entertainment mindset was brought into the traditional framework of the monarchy, the resulting cultural clash was inevitable, as the institutional requirement for quiet dedication, duty, and long-term commitment stood in direct opposition to a modern celebrity desire for immediate validation, personal branding, and commercial monetization. The subsequent relocation to a luxurious enclave in California was marketed as a quest for privacy and financial independence, yet the reality has manifested as a continuous, highly litigious relationship with the press. coupled with an intense reliance on the very media attention they claim to flee. This paradox is central to understanding their current standing in the world, where they occupy a strange twilight zone between authentic royalty and reality television stars. Possessing immense global facial recognition, but suffering from a severe deficit of genuine institutional authority or widespread public respect. The decision to target a younger, more impressionable demographic through these recent, highly informal social media campaigns is widely interpreted by industry experts as a direct response to a string of high-profile professional failures and declining commercial viability. Over the past several years, major streaming platforms and international talent agencies have quietly distanced themselves from the couple, citing a distinct lack of productive output, creative depth, and authentic value in their content creation endeavors. Confronted with the harsh reality that their original formula of relying on historical grievances and royal connections is yielding diminishing returns, their internal advisory teams have clearly pivoted toward a strategy that seeks to emulate the raw, unfiltered digital style of Gen Z pop cultural icons. This approach is born out of a desperate commercial necessity to capture the attention of an audience that has no memory of or interest in traditional institutional structures, attempting to rebrand a middle-aged duchess as a trendy, accessible social media influencer. Ultimately, however, this desperate pursuit of authenticity is bound to fail because it originates from a source that the public has come to perceive as fundamentally artificial and intensely calculating. Every piece of content, every carefully placed family photograph, and every retrospective lovey-dovey image from a decade ago is scrutinized by a global audience that has become highly sophisticated in detecting public relations maneuvers. The modern viewer understands that true authenticity cannot be manufactured through a corporate board meeting or a strategically timed photo dump. It is earned through years of consistent, selfless dedication to a cause higher than one's own visibility. As long as their public actions continue to be defined by a transparent desire to eclipse one another and settled scores with the past, their contributions to the world of philanthropy will remain overshadowed by the persistent noise of their own public relations machinery, leaving the world to watch, critique, and occasionally laugh at the ongoing spectacle of an elite brand in a state of permanent self-inflicted crisis.